I was actually just in the speaker room preparing, and I was able to hear the recitation of an ayah that just actually brought me to tears. And I want to talk about that because I want to link it to what I'm discussing today. But what that ayah said was, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة. This is such a deep ayah. Because Allah is saying that He has purchased the souls and the wealth of the believer, and He's going to give them Jannah. And I don't know if we realize how deep that is. But the reason that I want to talk about is that I think that a lot of us struggle with low self-esteem, maybe, low self-worth. I think we have a record amount of shame in our community. And what I had intended to speak about today was shame, actually. Because I wanted to look at stories from the seerah that were anti-shame. Stories from the Prophet ﷺ that completely annihilated shame. Because we need that as an antidote to the suffering that we are experiencing in our community. We have an unbelievable amount of generational trauma in our community. We have a lot of mental health challenges. We have a lot of trauma. And so much of it is rooted in this thing called shame. What is shame, first of all? Shame tells you that you are fundamentally not good enough. Shame tells you that unless you're perfect, you are not worthy. Shame tells you that if you make a mistake, you might as well stop trying because you're not good enough to try. You're not good enough to be part of this club called Muslims. Shame tells you that when you mess up, it's because you are fundamentally a flawed human being, that you are a fundamentally flawed daughter or son or husband or wife or mother or father. Now, some of this is going to sound familiar because we raise our children in shame. We raise our students in shame. We are drowning in shame. Let me tell you what that looks like. It looks like that when our children make a mistake, we tell them that they've made a mistake because they're bad. We tell them that they are a bad beta, beti, you get it, son, daughter. We tell people that when they commit sins, it's because they're bad Muslims. This is shame. Shame says that you are fundamentally broken or bad and not good enough. And that being imperfect means there's something wrong with you. But this is false. And as I went through all these stories in the seerah, it was one after the other that was completely against this message. If you actually study the seerah and you study the Quran, you see that the message of Allah and His Messenger is totally anti-shame. It is shaitan who wants us to believe that when we mess up, it's because we are bad. We are unworthy. We are broken. And that is wrong. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the believer and says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِي الَّذِينَ أَصْرَفُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. I want you to think about what that means. He is saying, say, O my slave, who have transgressed against their own selves. So who is he addressing? He's addressing the imperfect people. He is addressing sinners. He is addressing the people who are not getting it right. He is addressing the one who is messing up. Everyone with me? قُلْ يَا عِبَادِي الَّذِينَ أَصْرَفُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ. That these are the people who are transgressing against their own selves. They're not getting it perfect. They're not getting it right. And what does he say? He says, لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. He says, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. That is how our Creator speaks to sinners. That is how our Creator speaks to the people who are not getting it perfect. Now look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw a man urinating in the masjid. I want you to imagine this. Urinating in the masjid. A Bedouin man. And the other companions were wanting to rush to get this guy. Like, what is he doing? And the Prophet ﷺ said, stop, let him finish. Can you guys just think about that for a second? Can you imagine if that happened in our masjid? Yeah. Can you imagine if that was your kid? Everyone just want you to get into that space and imagine what we would do and how we would handle that. This was not a child, this was a grown man. I mean, if we had a 2-year-old doing that, what would we do? You know, if it was our kid. So he says, let him finish. And then he went up to him, and I want you to focus on this. I want you to focus on how he addressed this man who just did something pretty despicable. The behavior was despicable, but he never shamed the man. He never disgraced the man. He never put the man down. He never did what we would do. I want you to imagine if that was your child, how would you speak to them? What kind of names, what kind of adjectives would come out of your mouth? What kind of language, maybe? What kind of behavior? What would you do if that was your child? A child, not even a grown, a child. The Prophet ﷺ never debased the man. He never insulted the man. He simply corrected the man with respect, with dignity and honor. This is what we're missing. We think that using shame is going to make our children behave better. We think that we can control our children's behavior through shame. But it is the opposite. We are breaking our children through shame. We are breaking our community. This is not how you build a human being. You build a human being by correcting the behavior, but not putting the person down. I use the example of a GPS because I think that we as parents can learn a lot from the GPS. Because when you get in the car and you put in your address, how many of you have never in your life made a wrong turn? Raise your hand. Sometimes I get, yes, someone raising their hand. I ask them, how old are you? And they say, I'm 9. And I say, okay, you just keep on staying home. Don't get in the car. If you have driven, you have made a wrong turn. Everyone on the same page with me or no? Now imagine the moment you make a wrong turn, your GPS says, you worthless driver. I am keeping track of your mistakes. And I have come to the conclusion with my AI that you're worthless at driving. And you should therefore stop trying to drive. Just park up. Give up. That's shame. That's shame. If that were the case, no one would ever drive, right? Because we all make wrong turns. But what does the GPS do? recalculating, right? Non-judgment zone with compassion, just redirect you without shaming you. Are you understanding? As parents, we need to be more like the GPS. Because what we are doing is we are raising children who are not resilient. We are raising children with a lot of mental health challenges, and it is rooted in shame. If you study psychology, you will find that all of these mental health issues, from the personality disorders to the anxiety disorders to the depressive disorders, are rooted in shame. You know narcissism that we like to talk about a lot? That's shame. It is a person who believes deep down that there is something actually not good enough about them. And so they have to have all these sort of protective measures. That's why they behave the way they do. We have to change the way we are raising human beings because we are breaking human beings. And I understand that a lot of it is just modeling. We were raised this way, and so we raise this way. We were raised being told that you are bad every time you make a mistake. We were raised being told that we're worthless drivers because we made a wrong turn. And so we are modeling that with our children, but we have to stop. We have to change it for the next generation because this is what generational trauma is. It's passed on from generation to generation until somebody stops the cycle and says, I am going to heal myself and I'm going to do it better for the next generation. This is where we have to focus. And I am saying this, and I wish I could scream it from the highest mountain because this is the root cause of our problems. I will tell you that this is the root cause of our problems. I travel a lot all over the world. I meet a lot of communities all over the world. And I hear a lot of the problems that the communities, the Muslim communities are dealing with. And people will tell me we have problems with domestic violence. People will tell me we have problems with the youth leaving Islam. People will tell me we have problems with identity. People will tell me we have problems with all of mental health, divorce rate. We have problems in our marriages. We have all these problems, but you know what? The root cause of all of these problems is trauma. And we're not addressing that. And if we are not addressing that, then we are just putting Band-Aids on the gunshot wounds. We're taking Tylenol for a cancer, you understand? We have to address the root cause. And so when I looked at how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with his community again and again and again, I see that this is the opposite of shame. I'm going to give you another example. There was a man during the time of the Prophet ﷺ who was an alcoholic. He was actually found to be drunk in public. He would have to be like, helped to walk. He was that drunk publicly. And one of the other companions was so tired of seeing this man coming to the Prophet ﷺ drunk that he said, may Allah curse him. And the Prophet ﷺ stopped him. And he said, do not curse him, for I swear by Allah, if you only knew just how very much indeed he loves Allah and his messenger. Do not help shaitan against your brother. This is what we're learning. That when we shame one another, we are helping shaitan against our brother. We are not aiding our children. We're not helping our children. We're not helping the community through this. And so he said, now I want you to listen carefully. He did not define this man by his sin. Yes, this man was sinning. This man was drinking. That's a sin. But he said that this man's essence, his core, is actually still good. Do we know how to do that? Do we even know how to do that? How to look at someone who is imperfect and not turn their core into something bad? I argue we don't know how to do that because we were never taught. In our community, the way we treat one another, the way we raise our children, the way we learn in our madrasas, it looks at the behavior and says the behavior is bad, therefore they are bad. Simple. The behavior is not perfect, therefore that's a bad person. That's a bad Muslim. That's a bad daughter, son, wife, husband. I'm just going to tell you one thing. Do you guys know anyone in your life who has a really hard time admitting that they're wrong? Don't do that to your spouse, but y'all know what I mean. Maybe you've heard that before. You know what? Maybe someone's told you, you never can admit when you're wrong. Maybe you know this about yourself, if you're honest. Maybe, you've heard it. Do you know why that happens? This is deep because you won't imagine this is the reason. Do you know why that person cannot admit when they're wrong? It's because when they were a child, they were taught that if you make a mistake, it means you're bad. It means that when they were a child, they were taught that if you make a mistake, you will be rejected. That if you make a mistake, you will be maybe debased, shamed. Love will be withheld. Maybe they got the silent treatment. Maybe they were told that they are bad. And so they became terrified of ever making a mistake or admitting. Do you see the problem? We are not like the Prophet ﷺ, where we are able to separate between the behavior and the soul of the individual. We have to be like the GPS, where we see those we love making wrong turns. And this applies to ourselves as well, because we are going to make wrong turns. How many of you are the type of person who, when you make a mistake, you beat yourself up? You know that inner voice that's really harsh when you make a mistake? Y'all don't have any idea what I'm talking about, right? Everyone's just not me. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. That inner voice that beats you up when you made a mistake, when you're not perfect, when you let someone down. Oh boy, disappointing someone. That's hard. Do you know why that happens? Do you know where that voice came from? That is the voice of a parent. That is a voice that you heard when you made a mistake. And this is why I remind parents to be so careful how you speak to your child, especially when they make the wrong turns. Because that voice that you use becomes their own inner voice for the rest of their life, long after you're gone. See, that voice that we speak to ourselves is a voice we inherited. And so your question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want that voice to be compassionate and kind, or do you want it to be abusive? You decide that. We have to heal ourselves and change it for our children. We're all going to make wrong turns. But our job as parents, our amana, in fact, it is our trust, is to redirect. Look, I'm not telling you, the GPS doesn't go, you know what, you're going in the wrong direction, but you just keep doing you. Just keep going. No, that's not a good GPS. That's broken. That's not doing your job. That's called permissive parenting, and it's not healthy, yeah? That's not what I'm talking about. No, a healthy guide. Because as parents, that's what we're supposed to be, right? guides, shepherds. The Prophet ﷺ said, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعْيَتِهِ, that all of you are shepherds and all of you are responsible for your flock. He said we're shepherds. And so as guides, a good guide is going to reroute and recalculate and tell you, you know what, you made a wrong turn. Doesn't mean you're a worthless driver. It just means you got to make a U-turn. And then you make another wrong turn. What does the GPS do? Well, at this point, they're like, okay, that's it. No. Recalculating. You could make 500 wrong turns in one day, and the GPS never calls you a worthless driver. But it will recalculate over and over and over. And that is all that we're supposed to be doing. Tawbah is to return. Tawbah is to come back. Now, I want to end with where I started, which was the ayah that made me cry. And that is this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He is purchasing our soul, ourself, in order to give us something infinite. So I want you to think for a moment. What does that say about the value of our soul? If the Lord of the